Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we are really excited today. We have a director with us of a new and upcoming rom-com. We were talking with director Peter Hutchings, director of Which Brings Me to You. And Peter, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
So, this is your first time on the podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about how you became a director.
I kind of grew up a little bit immersed in it. My parents were on the original crew of Sesame Street,
Oh,
actually.
way.
Yeah. So some of my earliest memories are on the set of Sesame Street.
Uh-huh.
My dad's a photographer, and so I kind of grew up in that, and obviously, like everyone, loved movies. And at a certain point, it was like this could actually be something that I do with my life. And I took a little detour into academia actually,
Yeah.
and went pretty far. I got my PhD in literature, and at a certain point, I got an opportunity to assist Bruce Beresford, the great Bruce Beresford, who directed Driving Miss Daisy and Tender Mercies, to assist him on a movie, on a romantic comedy that he was doing with Jane Fonda and Catherine Keener. And I just fell back in love with the process
Mhm.
and didn't turn back.
Yeah, I saw in your bio that you had a doctorate in literature, and some people are
Yeah.
quick to sort of discount romantic comedies as not great literature, not a value. What would be your response to that as somebody who is an expert on film and literature?
Two words, Jane Austen.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 What draws you to the genre? Why do you think that's been sort of your focus?
You know, it might be a dozen more rom-coms before I figure that one out. I mean, I love them,
Uh-huh.
like that's kind of where it begins and ends. It's one of my favorite genres. These are the movies that we grew up with, and at a certain point, it's like, what do I want to put out there in the world? What are the stories that I want to tell? How do I want to connect with people? How do I want for
Hmm.
my audience to feel? And rom-coms kind of have it all. They're
Hmm.
the ups, the downs. At the center of it is, these relationships that are the heart of our human experience. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of, I think, one of the perfect film formats going back
Hmm.
all the way. It's a very venerable history,
Hmm.
back to His Girl Friday, Bringing Up
Hmm.
Baby, and all the way on through. So
Hmm.
definitely a
Yeah.
student of the genre, and I
Mm.
love it, and it's a bit of a privilege to be able to
Mm.
participate in it.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind the scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So, this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. Yeah, I've said that a lot of times that, romantic comedies are inherently hopeful. And
Yeah.
I think it's no big surprise that we've seen sort of finally an upturn because they just weren't making them for as far as features for
Yeah.
so long. But post pandemic, I think it's no surprise that kind of what we all needed was some rom coms.
Absolutely. That's really come into focus for me the last few years, seeing the
Mm-hmm.
state of the world and just, this is what people need. We
Mm-hmm.
actually shot The Hating Game in December 2020.
Mm-hmm.
It was right in the middle of uh of everything. It was pre-vaccine, so film sets were, it was a bit intense, and suddenly half of my job became reminding
Right.
the cast and crew that we were making a movie and we were having fun, and that was a challenge. But
Yeah, yeah. I noticed that your movies tend to be based on books, and I was just curious when you do that, do you read the book or do you kind of want a separation?
absolutely, obviously, if I'm doing the adaptation myself,
Hmm.
I try and, if I'm doing an adaptation, try and adapt a book that I like. Sometimes you go and you see a film adaptation and it has nothing to do with the source material, and it's like, why
Right.
why bother?
Yeah.
um I definitely, this is I think where my background in literature has
Hmm.
has come
Yeah,
through,
I'm
because
sure.
doing all of that reading and analysis, I think it's
Mhm.
been something I've been able to bring to this
Yeah,
process.
yeah,
Which brings me to you is based on a book, but I
yeah.
didn't read the book first. I read the screenplay first, and then I read
Mhm.
the
Well, the
novel.
book is just coming out, is that right? Or
No,
at
actually,
least
the
on
book.
Audible, it was. So maybe the audiobook's just coming out.
So they're doing a re-release,
Oh,
because of
re-release.
the
Okay,
movie tie-in. Yeah, yeah.
got it.
No, the book
Yeah.
actually came out maybe 15 years ago.
Oh, yeah, because I looked
Yeah.
it up because I listen to most of my books and I was like, oh, it's not out yet. But yeah, that's cool. I look forward to reading it. I loved The Hating Game. I thought that was kind of an
Oh,
underrated
thank you.
film, and it did enemies to lovers real well, which is hard to do. And I think one thing that people get wrong is that you have to show like enough humanity in the characters so you just don't hate them. You know,
Right.
it's the hard part.
Yeah. Yes, that's
Yeah.
very good. That's yeah.
But it
Again,
was a
going
very
back to
sexy
Austin.
movie. I think that must have been challenging and fun to put together.
It really was, but like you're saying, there's when you're putting this together, starting with the screenplay and then working with the actors and then all over the departments, a lot of the conversations we have is about finding that tonal balance, because you want it to be fun, we want it to be sexy, we want for the characters to be accessible enough that you're invested. You want them to get together even while they're
Yeah.
being a little odious toward each other.
Yeah.
Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by W Rated, the podcast where we willingly watch the world's worst rated movies. Join me, Daisy,
and me, Claire, as we break down the IMDb Bottom 100, choosing a different film from the list every episode.
We take a deep dive into the plot, production, release, and reviews, usually with a special guest, to uncover if these films are truly as bad as everyone says they are.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Good Pods, and anywhere else you find your podcasts.
Well, let's talk about, which brings me to you. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what the movie's about?
So it's about these two romantic burnouts who meet at a friend's wedding. They're instantly attracted. They almost hook up in the coat closet, and it doesn't go well. And they end up spending the day together and into the night, just talking and telling each other about their past romances, all of the ups and downs, and their first loves and first heartbreaks. And on the way, start to wonder whether there might be something there with each
Mhm.
other.
Did did you was it just luck that you ended up working with Lucy again?
No, so when we finished the hating game, it was like, let's find something else to work on together.
Uh-huh. Oh, cool.
And this project, I'd actually read the screenplay some years before, but it was in development somewhere else. And so I had asked Brian Keaty at BCDF Pictures, the production company that I had just done the hating game with, or that I did the hating game with. I asked him years ago to kind of keep an eye on the project. And by some stroke of luck, he was working on another project, developing another one of Juliana Baggett's novels. And she told him, she said, this the screenplay based on one of my novels has just become available. and Brian, who remembered that we had talked about it, said, yeah, we're really interested in that. So we jumped on that. So when we finished the hating game, Lucy and I are talking about something to work together. I just started developing Which Brings Me to You, sent it to her. She flipped for it just as much as I had. And we were off to the races.
Did you do anything to help Lucy and Nat have chemistry? Like, did you do a chemistry read or things like that?
So they knew each other a little bit beforehand.
Okay.
Which goes a long way. It was the same with Lucy and Austin in the hating game. That prehistory goes such a long way. But what I did with the two of them is we did a lot of Zooms, the three of us together, workshopping the scenes and workshopping the dialogue. I really wanted for the two of them to be as comfortable with their characters and with the words that they were saying and with their arcs as they were with each other and working with each other.
Yeah.
And so by the time we got to the first day of shooting, they were just already in lockstep together.
Mm-hmm. So is it hard when you have a movie with so many flashbacks and so many other pairings than your main pairing? I would think that would be challenging because you don't want them to have more chemistry with one of the others
Right.
than with the main pairing.
Yeah. So there's, I guess, if you've seen the trailer, you know that part of the way that the film is structured is that they show up in each other's flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that does is it keeps
true.
tabs on that central relationship between the two of them, and it reminds us that the focus of this, flashback isn't about the past romance. It's about our main character telling the other one about their past. And so that's always foregrounded, and we're always reminded. But you're right, that was something that came up both at the writing phase and then also really in editorial as we're in post-production, as we're building the movie out to make sure that there was that balance. Yeah.
What's your favorite?
That's a good question.
Favorite part of the or aspect of the movie? How would you sell it to the Hallmarkies that they're going to really enjoy it?
I think that this movie has everything, which is the type of movies that I love, where you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to have all the feels. There's the ups and downs, and it's sexy and funny, and there's a lot of heart.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my favorite type of movies, where
mm-hmm.
it's a real full experience, and you really go on a journey with these characters, and hopefully people are going to find themselves in these characters, and like you were saying at the beginning, come out of the movie with a real sense of hope, both for themselves and maybe also for their relationships.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think that this is a romantic comedy that people will be able to connect with and relate with, as opposed to some which are still fun but are more like fantasy type things, like our royal movies and things like that.
Exactly, and I love those movies. Also, those are really fun. But yeah, I think you're right. This one has I hope very fun and entertaining, but it also is about real characters, and it has a lot of dimension, and it's grounded, and so I think it's easier, at least for me, it's easier to connect with the characters in those types of movies and really go on a ride with them.
Yeah, the movie that I think would be a good comparison is Definitely Maybe. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I think
several times.
Similar, in just format and tone and style.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely in the
rotation.
I rewatched that before. It's always in the rotation, and it's definitely one that I went back to and revisited when I was working on this.
Cool.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, Hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
Have some fun get to know you questions we like to end the interview off with.
Sure.
So, first question is, what is the best ice cream flavor?
I don't know why this just came to mind, but I'm going to go with it. I haven't had it in 30 years, but it was like my flavor growing up. Rocky Road.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. What's your favorite color?
I don't know if there's, blue.
Okay, good.
I say that because I wear blue like 90% of the time.
What music are you into right now?
I've been listening to, I've got a good Motown playlist
Okay, good.
going. Yeah.
What's your go-to date night food?
Well, I like to cook. And so, I at the same time keeping it simple, but the last thing I made was, like a rack of lamb with a mushroom risotto.
Ooh, that sounds
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Well, if you're going out to do something, what would be your go-to date night activity?
Well, I'm gonna get a little romantic here, but I do like, obviously going to see movies. But when it's not a movie, I can go dancing, or I do like karaoke.
Yeah. So there you go. What's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh gosh. I've done Coldplay, The Scientist,
Oh,
on numerous occasions.
for me, it's Wide Open Spaces. I guess they're just the Chicks now, but that song is like,
awesome.
because you want to have a song for karaoke that you know you can nail. Like it's right in my range.
Yeah.
I know I can sing it.
And do you do solo or with others?
I mean, I would always prefer with others.
Me too.
But yeah, I can. That's one I feel confident in. So I can. It's not going to be painful for people.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that.
All right. Which do you like better, dogs or cats?
Dogs. I've wanted a dog my whole life, and I just got my first puppy
Oh,
over the summer.
cute.
Yeah, he's a little terrier named
Aw.
Ollie, so that's an easy question.
Oh, which do you like better, beaches or mountains?
I love them both, but I lived 5 years at 9,000 feet in the Rockies, so I'm gonna say the
Oh.
mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot of beaches in the movie.
Well, I actually grew up right next to a beach.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it, this little island in the middle of the Bronx called City Island.
I think I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, they made a really nice movie about it, set on City Island a few years ago with Andy Garcia. Highly recommend it.
Oh, I love Andy Garcia.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. All right. Last question. What is your favorite Hallmark or romantic movie?
So this is a hard one because there are just so many of them. Probably the classic that I go back to again and again is When Harry Met Sally. More recently, what I go back to again and again is About Time. I love that movie.
Good choices. Very good choices. Well, very good. You answered all the questions. Thank you so much for coming to talk with us. And people, how can is it getting so it's getting a theatrical release and then VOD?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, it'll be in theaters on January 19th. And then after that, the VOD will be announced when that's going to be coming out, and it'll be available everywhere then.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming to talk with us.
Thanks for having me on.
We'd like to thank Peter for coming on the podcast. This was so much fun to get to talk with him and hear about the process of making a Hollywood rom-com. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Please put your comments in the comment section or on Twitter. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. We really appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group and merch store. And I'm going to put a playlist of all of our director interviews because we've done tons over the years. And so you definitely should check those out. Thank you to Peter, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.